She was just doing her job, balancing heavy trays, smiling through exhaustion, and trying to survive another long shift at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. That night, everything seemed normal, until a powerful billionaire walked in with a group of wealthy guests and quietly began speaking in Russian. The people at his table laughed. The waitress kept serving them, unaware that she was the reason behind their smirks. They thought she wouldn't understand a single word. They thought they could humiliate her in front of an entire restaurant without consequences. But seconds later, the woman they mocked did something no one saw coming, and the entire restaurant fell completely silent. Who was she really, and why did her response leave a billionaire humiliated in front of everyone? For most people dining at Belmont House, the experience was about luxury. Crystal glasses, private chefs, and reservations booked months in advance made it one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. For Amara Johnson, it was simply where she worked 6 nights a week to help keep her family afloat. At 28 years old, Amara had built a reputation as one of the restaurant's most respected servers. She was calm under pressure, remembered every customer's preferences, and handled demanding guests with professionalism that impressed even the toughest managers. But what most people didn't know was how hard she had worked to get there. Raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs, Amara learned early that respect was not always freely given. As a black woman growing up in a wealthy neighborhood where she often felt invisible, she had experienced enough quiet prejudice to recognize it instantly. Still, she refused to let bitterness define her life. She focused on her goals, helping her younger brother through college while saving money to pursue her own dream of opening a bakery one day. That night started like any other shift. The restaurant was packed with celebrities, executives, and politicians. Then the front doors opened. A famous billionaire stepped inside surrounded by wealthy investors and foreign guests. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Managers rushed to accommodate him. Employees whispered his name. And within minutes, Amara was assigned to his table, completely unaware that this powerful man would soon turn her ordinary night into a moment she would never forget. The moment Amara approached the billionaire's table, she could feel the pressure. His guests were loud, demanding, and clearly used to controlling every room they entered. Expensive watches flashed under the restaurant lights. Security stood nearby. Even the restaurant manager kept glancing toward their table, terrified that anything could go wrong. Amara stayed professional. She greeted them, took their orders, and moved with the calm confidence she had mastered over the years. But almost immediately something felt wrong. Each time she returned to the table, the billionaire leaned toward his guests and began speaking in Russian. At first, Amara ignored it. She assumed it was private business talk. But then came the laughter, not polite laughter, not casual conversation. It was sharp, mocking, directed every time she poured water, laughter, every time she placed plates on the table. Whispers every time she walked away, more laughter. Amara tried to focus on her work, but she began noticing the way they stared at her. One of the guests smirked as she served dessert. Another pulled out his phone, recording her as the table laughed even harder. Nearby customers began turning their heads, sensing the uncomfortable energy spreading across the dining room. Then the billionaire said something in Russian that made his entire table burst into uncontrollable laughter. One woman nearly spilled her drink from laughing so hard. Amara didn't understand every word, but she understood enough. Years earlier, while attending community college, she had studied foreign languages and spent 2 semesters learning Russian after becoming fascinated with international culture. She hadn't used it much since then, but certain words were impossible to miss, and what she heard made her blood run cold. The billionaire had compared her to a servant. He mocked her appearance. He joked that people like her should feel lucky to serve people like him. Then he made a cruel comment about her race that caused even nearby diners to look uncomfortable. Amara's hands shook as she stood in the kitchen trying to process what she had just heard. Her coworkers noticed something was wrong, but before anyone could ask questions, the manager rushed over. Instead of helping her, he warned her not to create problems. He reminded her who the billionaire was. He reminded her how much money he spent at the restaurant. He told her to smile and finish the night. Amara felt completely alone, humiliated, powerless. She walked back onto the restaurant floor carrying their final course, trying to hold herself together as dozens of strangers watched. The billionaire leaned back in his chair with complete confidence, convinced his secret insults would remain hidden forever. But what he didn't know was that Amara had finally decided she was done staying silent. Amara walked toward the table one final time, carrying dessert with hands that were barely steady. The entire restaurant felt unusually quiet, as if people sensed something bigger was about to happen. Even nearby diners had stopped eating, watching the tension build from a distance. The billionaire looked completely relaxed. He leaned back in his chair with the same arrogant smile he had worn all night, whispering another joke in Russian as his guests laughed beside him. He truly believed he was untouchable. Amara carefully placed the final plate in front of him, then she stopped walking. For a few seconds she simply stood there. Her heart pounded so hard it felt impossible to breathe. Her manager stared from across the room, silently begging her not to do anything reckless. Then Amara calmly turned toward the billionaire and began speaking flawless Russian. The laughter stopped instantly, every face at the table froze. The billionaire's confident smile disappeared as Amara repeated, word for word, the cruel insults he had made about her race, her appearance, and her worth. Loud enough for surrounding tables to hear, she exposed every humiliating comment he thought had been hidden behind another language. The restaurant erupted. People gasped. Others stood up from their seats. Several diners began recording. One woman at a nearby table looked horrified as she realized what had happened. The billionaire jumped to his feet, furious and embarrassed, demanding silence, but it was too late. Then Amara revealed one final truth. She explained that her late father had been a language professor who taught her Russian as a child, reminding her that education was something no one could ever take from her. And before walking away, she looked directly at the billionaire and calmly exposed him in front of everyone with words he would never forget. For the first time that night, the most powerful man in the room looked completely powerless. The billionaire stormed out of the restaurant surrounded by his embarrassed guests, but the damage was already done. Videos of the incident spread online within hours. Diners who had witnessed everything began sharing their recordings, and millions of people watched the moment his secret insults were exposed in front of the world. The luxury restaurant tried to protect its reputation at first. Management released vague statements and avoided responsibility. But public pressure grew quickly when people learned that Amara had reported the harassment before speaking up, and was told to stay silent because the billionaire was too important. Within days, the restaurant faced massive backlash. The manager who ignored Amara's concerns was fired, and the company was forced to issue a public apology. Many customers demanded better protections for employees facing discrimination. As for the billionaire, several business partners publicly distanced themselves from him. His image of sophistication and power was shattered by one moment of arrogance he thought no one would understand. But for Amara, the night left deeper scars than viral fame could erase. The humiliation, anger, and memories of standing alone in that room stayed with her. Yet her courage also inspired thousands of people who had faced racism in silence. Messages poured in from workers, students, and families who saw their own pain reflected in her story. Because racism doesn't always arrive with screaming headlines. Sometimes it hides behind wealth, behind privilege, behind another language spoken in plain sight. The real question is this: how many people are still being humiliated every day by those who believe they'll never be held accountable? And when that moment comes, will someone finally speak up like Amara did?